Okay, so we're going to get started now. So thank you for joining us in today's webinar, Statistics in FCS Express 5 using text tokens, custom tokens, and clinical tokens. We're going to go over quite a bit of material as it relates to statistics, some of the default stats, the tokens that we can use in FCS Express. We're going to talk about some of the new tokens that are available in FCS Express 5. We're going to talk about making custom tokens, and we're also going to talk about how to create functions using some of the functions that are available in FCS Express and some of the new functions that are available in FCS Express 5. Okay. We're also at the end of the webinar, we're also going to talk about some of the clinical tokens that are available and some of the things that we can do with the clinical tokens, tokens that are available for the clinical edition of FCS Express 5. Please keep in mind, though, that FCS Express 5 clinical is not yet available. We do intend on releasing FCS Express 5 in a couple months. Okay, so let's just get right into it. So I do want to mention that before we actually start talking about stats, that we do have a number of different upcoming webinars that are on the schedule. Basically from now throughout the end of March, we have a number of different webinars that cover many different topics. So if you're interested in any of the different webinars we have to offer, please visit us at fcsexpress.com to register. And as you can see here on the screen, there is a number of different topics that hopefully interest any of you. Okay. So just as an overview of some of the topics of discussion for this webinar, we're going to talk about default stats. In FCS Express, there's a vast number of different statistics that you can easily insert into your analysis to give you the data that you want. What we'll do is we'll talk about how we can insert them, how can we edit them and format them, and we're also going to talk about some of the new stats that are available to us in FCS Express 5. We're also going to talk about text boxes, and I know text box seems kind of like a trivial thing to talk about, but in FCS Express they do serve a number of different purposes, not just for plain text, but something that we'll talk about later, specifically tokens. Okay, and what are tokens? We'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about the different types of tokens that we have and some of the tokens that are new to FCS Express 5. Also within the text box, we will be able to customize tables that we can create where we pick and choose whatever stats we want throughout our analysis, whether you're analyzing one data file or 20 data files, either on one page or 100 pages. We'll be able to customize these tables to pick and choose the stats we need from anywhere within our analysis. Okay. We'll talk about custom tokens. We'll talk about how we can create custom tokens to perform any type of mathematical formula within our analysis. And we'll also talk about a form of custom tokens, specifically functions, where we can actually have FCS Express perform these various functions just like we would perform functions in Microsoft Excel. Our functions are now organized. If you're familiar with the functions in FCS Express 4, they were basically one big long list. There really wasn't any order to it other than it being in alphabetical order. But now what we've done is we've organized it a lot nicer and neater, just so it's easier to find different functions that you may be looking for. We've also added some new functions. Specifically, there are several new functions that provide different tests of significance. So we'll talk about that as well and show you an example of one of those, the t-test. If you are an avid user of custom tokens, you know that it could be a little bit cumbersome to edit a value within a custom token, especially if you wanted some of those customs to be manually entered, and some of them were variable based off of the analysis that was being performed at that minute. Well, what we've done is in FCS Express 5, we have a number of different custom token display options that are now available to you that you can help that can help you manipulate these custom tokens a little bit easier, and we'll talk about those as well. And as I mentioned at the end, we'll talk about some of the clinical specific token features like statistic classifiers, how we can integrate conditionality into our analysis, and also how we can do some font formatting within our analysis. Okay. So for the layout I have here, I already have a lot of dot plots already inserted in here. So what we're going to do is there are several types of default statistic tables that we can create in FCS Express. And we can easily just create these just by right-clicking on a plot. And you'll see that the different option that pertains to that plot will be specific for the plot type and what's available within the analysis. Okay? So here, by right-clicking here, you'll see that there's an option for gate statistics. Okay? And if I right-click on that, I'm going to get a table that shows me some of the random statistics that we have here available in FCS Express. Okay? We can also do that for this plot. We can also show that we have quadrant statistics for a plot as well. And by right-clicking on that, I can call up my quadrant statistics. And by right-clicking on my histogram, I can also call up histogram statistics. Now, all these different types of statistical tables offer the same type of functionality. We can edit them much in the same way. So, for example, if I right-click on my gate statistics, you'll see here that I can actually pick and choose what kind of stats I want. So let's say if I wanted to get rid of one of these columns here, like I don't really care about the overlay number, I can easily just deselect that and you'll see that it automatically it reverts to, it takes that column out of my display. Also, if I just right-click on here and just go to Format, I'll be able to edit a couple characteristics for this particular stats box. So again, if I just click on Stats here, I can just deselect the statistics I want. Maybe I don't want my geometric mean for my X and Y axis. Maybe I only want to see the percent of gated cells. And if I scroll down, you'll see that we actually have some new statistics that are available to us in these default stats. Specifically, the robust statistics that were introduced in BDFAX DIVA, so robust standard deviation, robust CV. And for those of you that aren't familiar, you could always go to the BD website and find out what those particular stats are. Okay, here's a PDF. You can download this PDF from the BD website. We also have two new stats that we call percent of gated parent and percent of gated grandparent. And what those are stats to show us what the relationship is of a stat to the parent that's been applied to the gate that's been applied to a plot. So it can sound a little bit cumbersome. Basically, it comes down to like percent grandparent, percent great-grandparent. So these were features that were requested of us by various users for a while now. And also, if you have some questions about what those are specifically, you can always go to our website and you can find a bunch of information about what they are specifically, what the overall numerical formula is, on how these stats were calculated, what it means overall. Okay? So once I figure out what the stats are that I want, I could easily just select them. I could preview them. And then I can see what my stats table is going to look like as a result. Here, what we can also do is we can display the number of decimals. Maybe I don't want any decimals. And maybe if I do want decimals, how do I want the software to round up? Do I want them to round up? Do I want them to round down and truncate? These are features that are new to FCS Express 5 as well. I can just restore. You'll see that the table goes back to the original look and feel that I wanted, that I had. I can also customize the fonts here within my stats table. Okay, so if I wanted to use a certain font, maybe a certain color, maybe I wanted to bold it, maybe just increase the size of it a little bit, I can preview that. Then you'll see that new look and feel I get there as well. Okay. I can also choose what gates do I want displayed within the stats box just by choosing the gates to display option here in the left-hand corner. So the way this works is where you can either choose to show all gates, no gates, or I can either choose to show the gates I've selected or choose all the gates except the ones I've selected down here below. If I click on this, let's say I only want to show the stats for gate 1. I'll choose only the gate checked below, choose that. And then you'll see here that the stats box will show me what this the particular stat is for, first of all, overall, and what that particular gate is I've selected. Okay. And then we can choose some aesthetics about the plot, if we want to increase or decrease the size or lock the aspect ratio, or maybe we want to add a border around this. We can just choose the type of border, how wide do we want the line to be, and maybe the color. You'll see that when I click OK, we'll get the stat box display that we were looking for originally. Okay. So we can do these with all of these particular boxes. So for quad stats, the gate refers to each of the individual quadrants that are within that plot. So you'll also notice that here with the quad, we'll also get text boxes here that give us stats that are specific to the percent of gated cells within each of those quadrants by default. Okay? So that's a nice feature to have as well. And I was saying, but you can still edit this just like you would with the other stat box that we talked about earlier. And the same goes for our histogram stats. So here we just pick and choose what we want to see here within our histogram stats. Edit that as we go. Click OK. And there we are. Okay? So now that we have all these plots and these gates and stats and whatnot, how does this manipulate when we change all our data? So for example, if I just change this, just to show that I have 9 data files that I'm analyzing here, if I just click on Next here, what you're going to see all these stats automatically update. Okay? So whether I move these gates on their own, you're going to see the data update automatically as a result. Okay? So let's say we're analyzing, this is nice, we have one page of an analysis here. Maybe we want to have an analysis that has multiple pages, multiple data files across, a plethora of plots. Chances are we probably want to, these might serve some purpose, but chances are we probably just want to take bits and pieces out of each of these particular default stat boxes and combine them into our own. Well, what we can do is we can actually create our own customized table, just like you would create a table in Microsoft Word. Right? So to do that, what we need to do is we need to insert a text box. So from the Insert tab, under the General section, you'll see there'd be the option to insert a text box. So I'm just going to click on that. Click on my layout to insert that text box. And this text box is just like any other text box where we can just type regular text in there. And FCS Express has a fully featured text editor where what we can do is we can change the font in this text. You'll see that there's many different options of different fonts that we can use in here. Maybe we want to change the size or bold it. Italicize, we can do anything to change the styling. Maybe we want to change the font color. Or maybe we want to put a highlight. And what we can also do is we can center it, we can left align it, we can also add bullets in here if we need to. Or numbering, depending on what kind of point you're trying to make here. Okay? So what we can also do is insert something called tokens. Right? So if I just go back and insert a text box, what we can do, and if we right-click in that text box, what we can do is we can insert something called a token. So what a token is, it's live text. It's dynamic and it'll change according to your data. What that means is if I just right-click in this text box and choose token, we have many different types of tokens that we can insert into our analysis. Let's say that we want some information specific to the number of events here in my gate 1, in my first plot here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a statistic token, click Insert, and I'm going to tell FCS Express, first of all, where do I want this information to come from, which plot. So you'll see here there's a number of different plots, so whether I have 5 plots on 1 page or 1,000 plots on 20 pages, I can select wherever the location is for this particular information is coming from. Once I do that, I'm just going to choose the gate and the particular stat that I'm looking for. If I click OK, you'll see now that my token is inserted into my text box. Now if I click outside of that text box to deselect it, you'll see that it just looks like plain text. However, if I move my gate around, you're going to see that number is going to automatically update. So that's what I mean by it's live, it's dynamic. So it's always going to be automatically updating. FCS Express is going to constantly evaluate that number as the conditions on our analysis change. Okay. If I click within that text box, you'll be easily able to tell what the components are of that text box, what's plain text and what's a token. And you can see here that the token is highlighted in gray. So if we need to change that token, we could just double-click that to edit it. Maybe we want to change what plot that was coming from. Maybe we want a different gate, or maybe we just want a different statistic. Okay? I can change that, and you can see that the number updates automatically. Okay? So let's go back and look at the type of tokens that we have here. So in FCS Express, there's many different types of tokens, and I'll try to go through these as best as I can without providing too much overwhelming information about all the different types of tokens that we offer. The more common of the types of tokens that our users will tend to implement to their analysis is statistic and keyword tokens. Okay, so statistic, obviously, as you've seen, could be any type of stat that we can derive from any of our data that's in our analysis. So whether it's percent of gated cells, all cells, number of events, whatever the statistic is, we can create a token for that statistic. Okay. What we can also do is we can create keyword tokens. So what keyword tokens are bits of information that we can extract from our data files. So if you're not familiar with keywords, what keywords are they're like metadata that's embedded into the file that you've collected. And a lot of that metadata just depends on the type of software that you use to collect the data. So whether you use VDFX Diva or anything that pertains to a culture instrument, a lot of those softwares are going to have different keywords that they can embed in the data. There's also standard keywords that can be used across your data regardless of the instrument. Okay? So just to get an example of what a keyword is, I'm just going to select keyword. I'm going to insert that. And again, I'm going to be presented for what the data source is, what plot this information is going to be, or what data file do I want to use to extract this keyword. I'm just going to stick with this first one. I'm going to select my keyword. And then from here, I can click on my drop-down menu, and I can see all the different keywords that were written with that file. If I scroll down, you're going to see that there's a vast quantity of different keywords that I can use. A lot of them pertain to the number of parameters or what the parameter labels were. But what I want is something that's going to be relative to the sample identification, okay? And that's what this keyword is here. So I can select it, I can click OK. It'll take that keyword and enter it here in the field, but if you happen to know what the keyword is that you want to use, you can easily just type it in here as well. And then if you click OK, you're going to see the value inserted here within the text box, okay? And again, as our data updates, that should have updated. Well, actually, I used the wrong plot. That's fine. Let me go back here and choose the right plot. So now if I change this, then you'll see that the keyword value for that file will automatically update as well. Okay. So let's just go back and look at some of these other types of tokens that we have available to us. So statistic and keyword tokens, the more common the keywords that tokens that people will use. We also have something called a Statistic Classifier, and that's one of the clinical tokens that are available in FCS Express, and we'll talk about that more specifically near the end of the webinar. But what it does, it's a token that allows you to classify different levels of a step. So let's say you have a level, a statistic that you've calculated within FCS Express, and maybe you want to classify it as low or high or moderate, dim, bright, or something like that. What we can do is we can create a statistic classifier to help us classify that level. Okay. We also have a number of tokens that are specific to different layout properties. So maybe you want to see what the overall number of pages are in the layout. Or maybe you just want to see where the last time a particular layout was saved, what date it was, what date it was created, what time it was created, who the current user is, so on and so on, as you can see here. If you're using a calibration file to calibrate the channels within a plot, you can see what the last loaded calibration file that was used within that plot is as well. That's actually a new token that we've added to version 5. We can also create tokens for gates, so we can extract a token that gives us a gate name. If we created a comment for a gate, we can see what that comment was, what the link description is, what the points were. If you're doing Boolean gating, you can see what the formula is to create that Boolean gate. One of the new tokens that we have available to us in FCS Express 5 is the ability to see what gates make up a well, or what wells make up a well gate, I should say. And also, we can see what color has been applied to a gate. So this will come in handy if you created a pie chart and you wanted each of the pie slices to take the color of a particular gate to which that slice is assigned. Well, we can do that now. In FCS Express, pie charts use a coloring format that's similar to what the coloring formats that you use in Excel, but now we can take it a step further and actually apply a particular gate color to that pie. For the users of our security add-on module, what we can do is they have the capability to do electronic signatures, and we can create tokens for those electronic signatures where we can see what the signature name was, any descriptions that were assigned to that, what the signature status is, whether it was unsigned, signed, or never signed, when the date was, what the time was, who signed it, and any notes that they might have put in there when the signature was stamped. We can create tokens to look at compensation, either spillover or the compensation to correct for that spillover. We can also look at information about batch processing, what the current batch iteration is as you're going through batch processing, what the overall number of iterations that are being batched are, and also what is the start time for the current batch process. And that's a new token that we've added to version 5 as well. We can create system tokens where we look at the current FCS Express user, for example. So I'm logged in as the default user, and you can see down here, if I switched users, then the value for that token will automatically update as well. We can create tokens for the current date and time. Because it's 1:23 here on the East Coast of the US. And we can see who the current Windows user is and where certain folders are that are located on our operating system where we might need to locate, or maybe we're saving files. That's important because what we can do is when we are saving files, we can integrate a lot of these tokens into the naming of our file, or even the pathway for where this file is going to be saved. So if you're commonly saving items to my documents, you can just take this token, insert it into the documents where the location of my documents folder is, and it'll automatically update and add that that directory string within the pathway for where that file is saved. We can also insert tokens about the plot specifics, for example, the plot information. So if I select plot information and click on Insert, again, I could just select a plot, and I can see what kind of plot elements do I want this particular token to show, whether it's the information I have in a title or a footer, what the X and Y label parameters are, what the plot number is, or what the type of plot that was, what kind of description was applied to it, and also whether or not we're using channel calibration and whether it's been applied to the X or Y axes. Those are actually new to FCS Express 5 as well. So for example, if I just choose plot number, the plot number here for that particular plot, that density plot that I selected earlier, is plot number 19. So if you're not familiar with what FCS Express does, is every time you create a plot, it actually keeps a tab of the sequence of plots, all right? So, or the different objects that you've inserted into FCS Express. So that particular plot was assigned number 19. So if we need to look up a location of a particular stat, we can always go to plot 19 and find that rather easily. Okay. If we wanted to create a token for the data parameter, or finally, the custom tokens. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time looking at custom tokens because there's quite a bit of versatility and flexibility with custom tokens. So with custom tokens, what that means is we can create mathematical formulas within our analysis that FCS Express performs for us automatically. So for example, it could be something as simple as a ratio, maybe where you take one token divided by another and it gives you an output. Or if you want to do something more specific, like certain functions, maybe you want to define what the average was for a string of values. Well, we can do that here. And as I mentioned earlier, some of the new functions that are available to us in FCS Express are some of the tests of significance, like chi-square and t-test specifically. And then what we can do is we can create custom tokens using those functions, just insert the values for FCS Express to do the evaluation on its own. Okay? All right, so that was probably a lot of information about tokens. I just want to remind you that if you had any questions at all, you could always just enter the questions into the questions section of our webinar control panel, and I'll be happy to answer for you as we go. Okay. Otherwise, we'll just move on. So getting back to our table, if I just insert that here, what we can do is we can use tokens, either simple or custom, to customize a table, giving us the information that we need for a particular analysis. Okay. So I have this text box. If I just right-click in here, you'll see that there's a table option. And when I hit the table option, you'll see that there's an option to insert a table. Okay. You can also find this option if you just go to the text tab. You'll see that there's an option to insert a table. Either way, when you choose the option, you're going to be presented for the number of columns and number of rows you want that particular table to be. All right. So if you want 2 columns, maybe 7 rows, you can click OK. You'll see that it automatically adds it in there. Okay. Here within the text tab, you can also insert rows above, below, or add more columns, or maybe you want to delete rows or columns. Okay. But with the cells of this particular these tables, these function much like the tables that you work with in Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel, where maybe you want to merge some of these cells, maybe you want to put some text in those cells and just center it. And then again, as with the other font properties that you saw earlier, we could easily just format that to our liking. Okay. And then we can also format maybe the coloring of the shading that's been applied to that cell, just to give it a nice look and feel. Okay. So this table is going to service the convenience of customizing look and feel of certain stats. So it's nice to have all these tables, but chances are maybe we just want to extract some information from here so that way you can provide a little summary of what's going on with our analysis. So maybe we want some type of identification just to show us the sample that we're analyzing or the experiment that we're analyzing. Okay, I can just type in here, but over here I'm just going to right-click within that cell to insert a token. I'm going to choose a token type. This particular example, I'm going to choose keyword. I'll click on Insert. And then again, I'm just going to choose which data file or which plot is viewing a certain data file do I want this information to come from. So I'm going to choose this color dot plot that's on this page. And then I'm going to choose the keyword. So again, I can just click on the drop down and I can look for any type of information. Or if you happen to know it, you just type it right into the box, into the field. And then there's that value. And then again, with all these, I can either center them, bold them, do whatever I need to. If I need to resize this table, I can just make this smaller, make this bigger, do whatever I need. Okay? Again, if there are any questions, please feel free to enter them into the question section of your webinar control panel. Okay. Maybe I want some information like, what cytometer did this come from? If you're a lab that has many different cytometers, if you're a core lab that has some BD instruments, Coulter instruments, whatever, maybe it's important to know which instrument this was collected, on which this was collected. Okay. So again, we can just insert a token, And then we could choose a token type. So luckily, information about what kind of cytometer we use to collect this data can be found in a keyword token. So we can either go through the process of right-clicking here. We can just copy and paste this and just edit the keyword value. Right? So there's the cytometer keyword, and there's also the serial number if you need to get really specific about what you're using. What you can also do is you can drag and drop various elements into a cell on your table and insert a token specific for the information for which you're looking. So for example, if I want a keyword to come from this plot, I can just take this plot, click and drag it, and then let go, and my paste special box is going to come up. And it's going to give me the option of inserting either a statistical token or a keyword token from that plot. I'm going to click on keyword token. I'm going to click OK. At this point, all I need to do is just insert the keyword. Okay? Now maybe I want some statistics, for example. Okay? Maybe I want to know the number of gate 1 events. So rather than right-clicking or drag and dropping my plot into that cell, I can actually take a gate and drag and drop it into that cell as well. So if I just take my gate 1, move it over here into the cell, FCS Express knows automatically what the data source was. It already knows what the gate is. All we need to do is just select the statistic and click OK. And there's that number. And again, as I mentioned before, you can see that number update automatically. Now maybe I want a median coming from this particular marker over here. Okay. Well, what I can do is I can actually drag and drop that marker over here as well. And when I do that, the software automatically knows the data source and knows which marker. Again, all you need to do is just select the stat. But what we can do is when we have histograms that have multiple overlays on here, what we can do is we can select which overlay do we want this statistic to represent. Okay, so we can either choose the control sample or the actual sample. Okay, and then we can click OK, and then you're going to see that number is going to be inserted into there as well. We also have the ability to put tokens on a plot. So if you right-click on any plot, you see you'll have the option to add a text box that is embedded within that plot. I've done that already, and I've actually put some text in here. So I'd like to create some tokens to look at the MFI, the median for each of the overlays that I have here, specific to this M1 marker that I've inserted in this particular plot. So if I just click on Insert Token, I'm going to choose Statistic. When I do that, you'll see that FCS Express here has two different ways of how it can select a plot. You can select a plot from a list, so if I select this radial button here, I can select any plot. But you'll see here that when you embed a text box on a plot, the software will default to use the plot that the text box is already on, right? So then I just need to choose the overlay. In this case, I want the MFI for that particular, the control sample. I'm going to choose Statistic and just choose the median for that marker. And I'll click OK. All right, so there it is, the same number. Now I'd like to create a stat for the sample as well. I can actually just copy and paste this and then just change the overlay. So that way I know that this is actually for the gray sample that I see here, and then the sample MFI is for the red curve that I have here in my histogram. Okay, so those are some useful tools as far as tokens are concerned, and how we can use some of these tokens within our analysis to give us very specific information. what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you how we can create custom tokens now. So the custom tokens that we're going to create are going to be available from us from the View tab, and you'll see that there's a Custom Tokens button. So if I open that, I'm going to get a Custom Tokens window. Right? If I wanted to add a custom token to this list, I can just click on my green plus sign. I'm going to give it a name. Click Enter. Okay. So the way these custom tokens work, they're very similar to how you would create a formula within Microsoft Excel. Right? So once we have a token selected, down here is where we're going to dictate what the formula is for that custom token. And we'll do so by entering an equal sign. And let's say we just wanted to do some simple math like 1 plus 2. If I just drag this over here to the cell, you'll see that FCS Express automatically evaluates that. And as these numbers change, you're going to see that number is going to automatically update for the custom token. Now, obviously, we don't want just these simple numbers here. We would actually like to take some data as pertains to our analysis here and actually have it perform this math on our real statistical data. So in here, if I just right-click, you'll see you'll be able to insert a token. You'll also be able to just drag and drop a particular gate. So let's say I wanted to create a ratio for these gates divided by the number of events in this gate, my gate. So my gate 2 events divided by my gate 3 events. I'm just going to take gate 2, drag and drop it over here, and just select the stat. Okay? And you'll see here that FCS Express puts that token here, and it's going to be specific in the description of the token that's been inserted here. Okay? So we're taking the number of events from plot number 28, which was a color dot plot for that file, versus these parameters specific to gate number 2. That's a mouthful. What we can also do is just right-click on this token, and we can just tell the software to just show me the value rather than the description. And then it'll show me what that number is for that token that I've inserted. Okay? So now I'm just going to put the mathematical command, the slash for the divide sign, and then just insert the denominator. Okay? And that's going to be gate 3. So I'm just going to take this, insert gate 3 over here, and again I'm just going to insert the number of events. And there's the description. I can show the value just to show you. All right? And once I enter those numbers, you can see here that automatically the data automatically updates. So another type of custom token that we can create here are called functions. So when I add a custom token, if I right-click down here in the formula field, you'll see not only is there an option to insert a token, but there's also an option to insert a function. And we've actually grouped the functions a little bit differently in version 5 as we've than what we grouped them in version 4, where here we've actually grouped them together according to the type of function, whereas in version 4 they were just one big long list. So here we have different math functions where maybe we wanted to look at the sign of a number, or maybe we wanted to figure out what the maximum value within a string of numbers is, an array of numbers is. Maybe we wanted to convert a number to string or a string to a number. Maybe we're looking into some Boolean logic to see whether a particular statement was true or false. Maybe we just wanted to manipulate some text, where maybe we wanted to see maybe where in a string of text a certain string of characters was, and starting from one position going out to a number of position n. Here under the Statistics tab option, here are the different statistics that we have new to FCS Express 5, where we can do chi-square, f-test, grubs, ks test, Lillifors, and the t-test. SSMD and z-prime and z-test were available to us. Excuse me, z-prime was available to us in version 4. Z-test is new to version 5. Okay. So once we have the type of function that we want to add, then we could just select it. Okay. And that's what I've done up here. I'm just going to delete that. So under the mean, I've right-clicked and inserted the mean function. Okay. So you can see that when we insert the mean, here these are just placeholders to tell you what the particular structure is. So we have the mean, open parentheses, open bracket, followed by a string of numbers going on as long as you need, whatever the array of numbers that you need to evaluate is. Okay. Then we're going to close the brackets and close the parentheses, and once we have the numbers to make up that particular function, FCS Express will automatically perform that evaluation for us. Right? And that's what I've done here. So here I have mean, open parentheses, open bracket, and then I've inserted various statistics in the form of tokens to do that evaluation. Okay? If I just right-click on here, I could show what the descriptions are. So these are just the number of gated cells that I have on my functions page. Okay? So now that I have this, all I need to do is just drag this and drop this within a cell, and you'll see that number is automatically going to update as well. Okay? And again, these are live. This particular mean is looking at the value of the events in this gate, and this gate. If I just move these around, actually might have been the other gate. You're going to see that number is going to automatically update as well. Okay? So one of the new functions, t-test, works very similarly, where we have the command, and then we have the string of data, and then what we have as the expected mean. Right? So we would just insert the different values that are being evaluated, what we'd expect that mean to be, and that's what this p-value is. So now if I can just drag and drop this in here, you're going to see that one stat's going to update, and the other one's going to update when the other gate's moved. Okay? And we can take that stat and embed it on a bar chart like we have here, just by adding a text box and then just adding that that token within that text box. You'll see here that in the Insert Token menu, any custom token that we've created here is available to us from here as well. Okay? In FCS Express 5, there's a new plot type that we've introduced, and that's called scatter with regression plots. So the idea is that here we have a scatter plot, and within the scatter plot are different regressions that we can add to perform our analysis. Just right-click on here and go to Format, or I can just double-click on this plot. To call up my Format menu, you'll see there's an option for Regression Fit. So I can insert as many curves as I want. All you need to do is just click on Add, choose the regression type, and then you can preview that. And you see the math has done it for you automatically. You can see here that the curve is added to the regression plot as well. But with these curves also come a new set of tokens that we can use. Right? So within this plot, I've embedded several text boxes, and there are tokens that are available for each regression that's performed. So if I right-click in here and go to my Insert Token, I'm going to choose Statistical Token. Again, the software already knows that it's going to be for the plot on which this text box is located. Under Statistic, I can choose the type of statistic. So I can take regular 2D stats, but I can also take regression parameter statistics. And once I do that, then I can choose whatever curve has been embedded in that plot. So I'm going to choose Michaelis-Menten, and I'm going to have the various statistical tokens that are available for that curve. I'm going to click on VM. You see it's automatically added. Okay? I can do the same for KM, or I could just copy and paste this one into here. If I double click on that, then I can just make the edit and just click OK. Then again, just like with all my tokens, you'll see that this data automatically updates. Not only the curve, but the tokens as well. So when you're creating custom tokens, chances are there's going to be a variable that you need to enter into a formula. So the formula that we saw earlier where we're creating a ratio, taking one number, dividing it by another ratio, by another number to create that ratio. That's pretty simple. That's pretty typical. But chances are you're probably going to want to create a formula such as this one, where you're going to take one number, the number of events. Maybe you want to multiply it by a bead count, multiply it by a dilution factor, divided by the number of events at another gate, multiplied by a sample volume. Well, a lot of those are going to be variables because maybe you don't know what the bead count is for that particular day. Maybe you need to edit it as you go. Well, what we've done historically is we've created custom tokens for the bead count. The user would go in, edit those particular tokens, and then the software would prompt us, do we want to modify it? What do you want to do? Do you want to create a new token? Do you want to modify this one? What's the deal? And that was kind of a lot of clicks. It could be a little bit cumbersome to do that. And sometimes it wasn't straightforward as to what you need to do specifically. Well, what we can do here in FCS Express now is we can change the type of display that we have here for our custom tokens so we can easily access them. Okay? So if I just click on my custom tokens window, you'll see here that I have a number of different custom tokens here already that I've inserted into a table. But what I can do is once I've inserted them in here, I can format that token. And when I format that token, under the display option, is now we can change the display type. So we have 3 different display types that we can use now, in addition to the default label where it's just the plain label. Okay? So now what we can do is we can have FCS Express take our value, insert it into an edit box, which is what this is. And if we need to edit this number, we can just select it and then edit as we go. Okay? And you can see automatically that this number updates according to what that value is, since we're using the value of that token within our calculation. You can also see here in my custom token list that that number automatically updates too. So just to show you again, you can see the number updates here automatically. It's also updating here in the formula for the absolute count that we were calculating. Okay? And the same goes with this dilution factor. Let's say instead of a dilution factor of 10, maybe I want it of 5. You can see it's automatically updated here for the formula, and it's also updating here as well. Okay? We can also use drop-down menus. So let's say we had a list of different conditions that you wanted to notify or annotate within your layout. Or maybe you had a different list of different texts who were performing and you wanted to keep track of who was doing what. Well, what you can do is you can choose a drop-down list from the menu. Okay? And then from that drop-down list, all the choices that are available within that drop-down list can be entered here, just separated by a comma. Right? So whatever we entered here can be selected here. And you'll see that that option is going to be automatically updated here in our custom tokens window as well. The last type of custom token display option that we have is a checkbox. Excuse me, a checkbox. So the checkbox, that token is going to evaluate true or false, depending on whether or not that checkbox is checked. All right. So here, right now, this token is not checked, so it's evaluating as false. If I check that, it's going to evaluate as true. Okay? And you'll see here it automatically updates. Now what we can do is we can wrap that token into another token where something changes based off of whether or not all my information has been entered. Okay? So that's a cool feature, and that makes custom token capability a lot easier to work with. Okay? So this kind of brings me into some of the clinical tokens that we're working with. Okay? So you'll notice that the value of this particular token is changing when I click that, but not only is the value of that token changing, also the way that font is formatted. Okay? So in FCS Express IBD, what we have is we have the ability to alter the font properties of this particular token. So if I just double click on this, any token that we create in FCS Express, here in the left-hand column is going to have a font option. Okay? So by clicking here, what we can do is we can edit the font properties of that particular token, either based off the value of that particular token or based off the values of another custom token. So what I've done here is I've inserted a property to edit the font properties of that token based off the values of this custom token over here in my custom tokens list. So in other words, I'm telling FCS Express to give me a certain look and feel for the font based off of whether it's true or it's false. Okay? And the way true or false evaluates in FCS Express is basically just a number, whereas 0 is false, -1 is true. Okay? And what I've done here is I've added a list of different properties where I'm telling the software that if it turns out that it is false, I want it to take a Century Gothic font, red, and bold it. Otherwise, it's going to default to green. Again, Century Gothic and green and bolded as well, in the same font size. Okay, so that's why this is updating. Okay, so we could do that with a token that gives us a textual output. We can also do it with a token that gives us a numerical output. Okay. What we can also do is we can do a lot of conditionality in our in FCS Express in the analysis based off of the value of another token. So, for example, let me just go back to my other layout. So here I have a batch that's being performed. Right? I have one action added to the list, but maybe I have a number of different actions. We do have an upcoming webinar on batch processing where if you're not familiar with batch processing, it'll go into depth about all the different things that you can do with batch processing, all the actions that you can add, all the different options that are available to you. But what we can do is we can make this conditional just by double-clicking on this. So maybe in a particular analysis that we're doing, maybe we don't want this batch process to be performed. Well, we can tell the software to make it conditional based off of the value of a token, right? So if I just put an equal sign in here and just say, only perform this if it turns out that from this plot, the number of gated cells in gate 1 is greater than 20, for example. If I click OK, you'll see now that that's unchecked, okay? So I can click on it, but it's not going to check itself automatically. I would need to go in here and fiddle with this to get it to work, right? But now if I also update my data, let's say I make this bigger, you see once it is greater than 20, you'll see that it automatically checks itself, okay? So we can do that with any batch actions. We can also make pages visible based off of a token as well, all right? So for example, rather than this page, let's do this page. So maybe I want to make this page only come out if it turns out that that statistic that I used earlier is the same condition. Put the equal sign there too. Okay. So now if I go here, let's shrink that. You can keep your eye on the summary tab down here. You can see it disappears when it hits below 20. Okay. If it goes back up, you'll see it reappears here in my page tab. Oh yes, and finally, let's talk about statistic classifiers, which are available for the clinical folk. So if you remember, statistic classifiers were a different class that were available to us here from our token menu. Right? So if I just choose that type and just click Insert, the software is going to prompt me for which token is it that I want to evaluate. Which one do I want to classify? So here you'll see on the left-hand side there's a classification option, a category. And then we're going to tell the software to create the classification for a specific value. So again, it's just about using the tokens and telling the software which token you want to classify. So I can use another statistical token that I've created earlier, or I could use one of the custom tokens. So let's use a ratio that I created earlier, where I click on Insert. Okay. So it's going to look at this number, and it's going to classify it based off of whatever classification list I create here. And to add a list, I'm just going to click on Add. And then maybe I'm going to classify this as low if it turns out that this is between 1 and 3. Maybe I want to classify it as high if it turns out this is between 7 and 10. Or maybe I just want to reflex to something if it turns out that the value for that token doesn't fit any of those categories. I can just put that reflex here, here within the alternate value section. Now if I click OK, then you'll see what it is. So this ratio is 2.97, where we said that anything between 0 to 3 was going to be classified as low. Now if I alter this, you'll see that that number is going to update, the ratio is going to update, as well as the statistic classifier. Okay? So this is a very handy tool for our clinical customers that need this type of evaluation to present to pathologists and clients. Okay? So I think that just about wraps it up today. In summary, I just want to state that FCS Express 5 can generate many different types of statistics needed for the analysis of cytometry data. In addition to some of the standards that we've offered throughout the years, we've also added several new statistics, whether it's percent of gated parent, percent of gated grandparent, or robust statistics such as the robust standard deviation or robust coefficient of variation. Those are all new in FCS Express 5. We've also added the capability to perform statistical analyses for tests of significance, like using functions such as chi-square or t-test or any of those other values functions that I've showed you earlier. In FCS Express 5, not only can you create statistics in default windows, and you can do that easily through right-clicking, but we can also use tokens to give us custom statistics for the data that we're analyzing. And then we can easily just insert that into tables to give us the information that we need, just easily through drag and drop capability. Okay? And with FCS Express 5, as I mentioned, we offer many new statistics and functions that can give you the information that you're looking for your data. Okay? If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at support@denovosoftware.com. If something wasn't addressed properly within this webinar, just let us know. I'd be happy to answer it for you. If you have any questions, you can always look us up on FCSExpress.com. We're going to take a couple minutes to answer any questions that you have. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, like I said, you can just contact us at support@denovosoftware.com or just look us up on FCSExpress.com on our webpage. We have a ton of information on our webpage that could provide you with the information that you need, or you can just ask us specifically. Okay, so with that, I'm ending the webinar. I hope you have a good day, and I hope you've enjoyed our webinar. Thank you for attending. Goodbye.